It's a beautiful day. You know, it's crazy how difficult it is to get out of that habit of always trying to get something from the future or to stop ruminating on the past. And we always think the cause of our suffering is something outside of us. That this person has done something to me, or this situation is a problem. And so many of us spend our whole lives running away from something and running towards something else. And that is how animals behave. And so in a way we fall under the jurisdiction of the animal kingdom. And if you've ever watched National Geographics, then you understand that it is a cold, harsh, and brutal world. But I think the moment we slow down, stop moving so quickly throughout our day, going from one task to the next, if we could just slow down and appreciate this moment now, and then develop that habit, returning to the present moment over and over and over again. And funny enough, a lot of the suffering that we experience just goes away. Because we never realized that it was our own minds the whole time that was the source of all our suffering. I think that's why the spiritual journey, as they say, is so... No, in fact, it seems to be the most important thing that we can embark on in this life. Because so long as we are suffering, then our outer world will reflect what is within us. And so we will create more suffering in the world and the people around us. That is why they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, is because a lot of us are good-hearted. We want to do the right thing. And so we often sacrifice ourselves for the love of other people. Now, this isn't necessarily a problem that I've had, because I've always been particularly selfish. I've more or less loved myself at the expense of others. And that too causes a lot of suffering. But now, at this part in my journey, I think I've come full circle, where I've come to understand the balance between selflessness and selfishness. That you have to be selfish and take care of your own self first. Make sure that you are at peace and that you're happy and that you feel love. But you do that so that you can spread these positive things to other people. And at some point you realize that, well, there's nothing in this world that is really of lasting satisfaction. So any attempt to try and get things, to always be grasping at the next desire, you realize how futile it really is. And naturally, you just stop doing it, because why would you continue doing something that makes no sense? It makes sense when you believe that you're going to get something out of it, but when you realize that these temporary pleasures and a lot of the material things in the world take from us and give nothing in return, then it's easy to stop doing it. It's easy to stop doing these things that only cause suffering. So what our mind often does, one of its purposes actually, is to create a sense of separation from everything else, so that we can function in the world, you know. So it's the mind's job to be selfish. But taken to its extreme, the mind is also the cause of all evil and suffering in the world. And the heart, which we can look at as the opposite, the heart mind, is the source of all goodness and love in the world. The only problem is that if you give everything without taking care of your own self, and the world will just use and abuse you until you've got nothing left. And so really it comes down to balancing the heart and the mind. And most of us will fall pretty clearly to one side or the other. But in realizing which side we fall on, then we know exactly how to balance ourselves. I am not somebody who rejects the mind, who rejects the world. I think we just have to learn to put things in their proper place. Spiritual people who reject the body and reject the world are really no different than the materialistic people who reject the spiritual, because they're just two opposites of one thing, you know. Life is definitely hard in separation, and life is far more easy in unity with everything. You know, I still get angry, I still get irritated, but there's this everlasting sense of peace that underlies every moment. For a bit now, it hasn't really mattered so much what experiences are happening in the external world. People don't realize that the default state should be peace. It should be happiness. We live our lives like the default state is suffering, and then we just accept it like that's just the way things are. But again, that's like living as an animal. And I think that's the big change that's going to happen within the next few decades, let's say. Is that we'll stop getting so caught in this lower animalistic behavior, like rising up from the lower three chakras into the heart chakra, let's say, because animalistic behavior is not sustainable. And so what happens is that we create so much suffering for ourselves, and that suffering wakes us up, because suffering comes with it the inherent desire to stop it. It is motivation at its finest. And that is why human beings often don't get their stuff together until the last moment. Because it's not until we suffer enough do we truly gain the desire to change.